Hello everybody, it's vanburman here and welcome back to some more hardware review. We're going to be looking at the GTX 275 today, and thank you to everyone who joined me for the 13-year anniversary live stream, much appreciated. We did all the benchmarks for this live, which is quite nice. So this one actually did come out in January 2009, but the 2017, the 2018, the 2060, I believe, all came out the year prior, about 6 months prior. The sort of like 5 derivative was a bit of a refresh. This is the Asus edition and does have their mascot on there, their old school mascot, which is quite nice. I do miss having the graphics on the graphics cards. I know nowadays they don't really accommodate that sort of space that you would need, but you know, nevertheless, it is nice to see. This has had a mild overclock on it. It was actually just to try and bring it in line with a result I found from 3D Mark. You can feel free to check out that live stream if you so desire. If not, I've got all of the headlines here, so to speak. This cost me £12.50 off of eBay, including postage, and I think for the money, not bad. As you can tell though, it doesn't have any HDMI ports, so luckily I did have an adapter even. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, depending on your disposition, these Left 4 Dead scores are either really interesting or really, well, not interesting. So these are all the benchmarks I have currently for Left 4 Dead on the max settings, and it is one that transcends the GPU generations. So, you know, this is probably a good representation really of where it's at, and throughout this video we'll be mainly comparing it to the HD 5670, only because that is the only other graphics card that fits into like the low power or, well, lack of DX, either low power or lack of DX11 support, which obviously this card does not, unfortunately, which is the main limiting factor nowadays, as well as the VRAM. So, I mean, from that, you know, as we can tell, it absolutely trounces the 5670, and you could quite comfortably play this on a G-Sync related monitor. Obviously it is, you know, hugely beaten by the first 3 cards that we looked at, but as far as I'm concerned, that's to be expected. Unfortunately, I haven't got more graphs like this going forward, but there you have it. So we can move on to the last 2 on the easy benchmarks, which is Shogun 2 on medium 1080p, and also we have War in the North as well, that you can see on screen now. And yeah, it did substantially better than the HD 5670. Of course, I mean, it is a faster card. There's obviously no comparison there, but you know, these scores are perfect really. You're not going to do too much better than that, and you could even put stuff up to high on Shogun 2 as well, because like I say, the benchmark's a bit more difficult compared to the actual game itself. So we have the medium benchmarks now, and this is really the point of which we start to see a bit more of the power of the GTX 275, and it does really well at running, you know, both Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. I would say there was a marked improvement with that. Grid 2 ran really well also, and could even be ran at Ultra, but you know, you're pretty much getting near enough a 60 or close to a 60 FPS on high. And Mountain Blade Warband obviously ran really well, and I think, you know, that's the usual testing, which is about 102 men on each side or something like that, 100 men on each side, and yeah, no problem whatsoever. Obviously it was a bit of a difficult one because we couldn't test any of the normal medium benchmarks other than, of course, Grand Theft Auto. And Grand Theft Auto is, you know, one of them where it's, while it's an older game, it's obviously much more difficult for, you know, a older bit of hardware to be able to run properly. But if we played it on the normal settings with no anti-aliasing or anything like that, GTA actually got an average of 48.7 and a 1% low of 32.2, and it was actually a really good experience, but obviously everything had to be turned down. It lacks a DX11 support. Grand Theft Auto 5 is one of the few games that is DirectX 10 and is in the medium or hard category. So none of the games in the original hard category could be tested because of the API restrictions. I do apologise for the mouse being on the screen for Skyrim. Couldn't get a better way of recording it. And something that I noticed as well is I also managed to, at some point, break the frame lock on Skyrim, but you can't tell it in this. But I did when I played it at low settings. Don't know what I did. I think I messed around with the NVIDIA control panel. But nevertheless, as you can see, the scores here are far better than the HD 5670. You know, everything was far more playable and enjoyable, which I think is, you know, the main part of it, not just because it's a bit of rhyme in there. But no, I was still quite surprised that we had to put the Witcher 2 on the lowest settings, and I think if you wanted to play through the game with this card, that's what you'd have to do. And I know, obviously, The Witcher 2 and 3 were, you know, very intensive for their time. Witcher 3 still is. And Crisis at medium, once again, that is something that could be ratcheted up to high and still be playable. Now, the overall score comparison between the 275 and the 5670 is quite interesting, because it seems like I potentially made some sort of well, I've created a flaw, to be fair, in my methodology, and you know that's allowed the 5670 to win. Now, to understand why that's happened, it's because there is a lower disparity between its 1% lows and its averages. Now, without a doubt, the GTX 275 is a better card to use because you get the higher frame rates. You don't get as much stutter. And, you know, while the FPS benchmarks that I took do support that, the problem is there's quite a big gap between its 1% low and its averages. So this graph, and indeed history, will now show that the 5670 has defeated the GTX 275, even though that may not exactly be the case. Now, it getting just over 160 puts it, you know, in the slightly below good category. And, you know, if I was, let's say I only wanted to play this suite of games, which card would I pick? Well, I'd pick the 275 without a doubt. If you told me I had to use one card for a week, which card would I use? Well, I'd have to use the 5670. And that's purely because it's got that DX11 support, you know, to play Rocket League or, well, yeah, basically just, yeah, Rocket League. You know, but we could argue how playable that is or not, I don't know. Or maybe I could just spend the week with the 275 and play some older games. I don't know. But yeah, it's been really interesting to look back on it. Like I say, thank you very much everyone who joined the live stream. I've really appreciated you guys coming and hanging out with me for that one. We may well do, if there's a call for it, I may well do some more live benchmarking in the future. There's still lots more to come up, so I think what I'll do is I'll probably put a poll in the community tab. If you want to go and check that out, I'll run that for the next couple of days for the next card that I do. I am, you know, constantly rolling with one, so there's always one in the background, but I'm more than happy to, you know, give you guys the option of what you might want to see next. There's, you know, a couple of interesting pieces. But it's been nice to see, and it's been, as always, this is quite fun for me to, you know, have a play around and mess with, even if the test bench decides it doesn't want to boot half the time. Anyway, guys, I've gone for too long. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.